Come on, what's the biggest thing you've ever bought for pocket change? For Jason, a machinery hunter in over his head, that thing was 300 feet tall and weighed 13,000 tons. He shook hands with an old mine boss named Larry, paid just $8,000, and walked away owning the largest land vehicle on the planet. A metal beast so massive it once ate 240,000 tons of earth a day. But when he climbed into the control cabin, he found something nobody was meant to see. A sealed log that proved the giant wasn't just retired, it was buried. And the reason why would change everything. This is the Bagger 288, a 13,000-ton titanium dinosaur that once fed Germany's power grid. Built for $100 million, sold for $8,000. The retiring mine boss called it scrap. Jason called it destiny. But when he fired up the control cabin, the old logs told a different story. This giant was deliberately entombed. The machine had been sitting in a German lignite pit since 1978, a mountain of rust-streaked yellow steel that once cost $100 million to build. Jason first saw it on an obscure auction listing. Bagger 288, heavy industrial equipment, salvage condition. The price? $8,000. The seller, a weathered mine boss named Larry, told him over the phone that the excavator had been decommissioned decades ago. Parts of it were buried to stabilize the bench it sat on. Larry said the company had simply walked away. Jason flew to the Garswiller mine with a camera and a prayer. Larry met him in a hard hat and high-vis jacket, his gray beard catching the wind. They shook hands beside a massive track pad taller than a man. Behind them, the bucket wheel rose like a rusty Ferris wheel from hell, 21 meters across, 18 steel buckets each big enough to swallow a pickup truck. Larry handed him the keys and said no one had spun the wheel in 30 years. That first walk around was humbling. The bagger stretched over 200 meters from tail to boom tip. Cables snaked through its body like copper veins. The control cabin sat 70 feet off the ground, reached by a rusted ladder. Jason climbed up, pulled open the weather-sealed door, and stepped inside. Everything was covered in dust but intact. On the console sat a locked metal box. Larry didn't have a key for it. That night, Jason pried it open with a crowbar. Inside lay a single leather-bound logbook. The final entry was dated September 3, 1993. The handwriting was frantic, the pen pressing hard enough to tear the page. Geological survey confirms cavity migration. Site unsafe. Directive received. Cease operation immediately. Backfill access ramps. Do not disclose to regulatory. Below it, 3 words in red ink. Approved. LH. The control cabin logs proved the largest land vehicle on Earth wasn't just mothballed. It was sealed up to hide a catastrophic ground failure that could have swallowed the entire machine. And the man who signed the order, his initials were LH. Larry's full name was Lars Hartman. Jason climbed down from the control cabin, logbook clutched in his hand. He found Larry standing near the bucket wheel, arms crossed. Jason held up the red-inked page and asked, "You want to tell me what really happened here?" Larry's face went pale, then hardened. He said the ground shift was a natural risk in open-pit mining. The company sealed the record to avoid a panic. No one was in danger, he claimed, and the machine wasn't buried to hide a crime, just to stabilize the bench. But the logbook told a different story. The words "do not disclose to regulatory" weren't about safety. They were about money. A little digging revealed that in 1993, a geological survey had detected a massive void migrating upward from a deep-seated fault. If the bagger continued digging, the entire western bench would have collapsed, taking a $100 million machine and potentially dozens of lives with it. Instead of reporting the hazard, the mine owners backfilled the access ramps and retired the excavator quietly. For 30 years, the Bagger 288 sat as a silent tombstone over a secret that could still kill. But here's the thing, Jason wasn't there to litigate the past. He was there to bring the giant back to life. When he told Larry he intended to restore it, the old boss laughed, then grew serious. "You're going to need more than a wrench," he said. "You'll need a miracle." Enter Sandra, a hydraulics engineer who had spent 15 years maintaining bucket wheel systems in the Rhineland mines. She had seen the Bagger 288 as a young apprentice, back when it still chewed through the earth. Jason flew her in with a single promise, the chance to do what no one else had ever attempted. She took one look at the sprawling steel skeleton and said, "Give me 3 months and a team of 10. The first challenge was power. The Bagger 288 requires 16.56 megawatts of electricity, enough to light a small town. All external lines had been severed decades ago. They had to truck in a portable substation and rethread cables through catacombs of rusted conduit. Then came the bucket wheel. Its 21-meter diameter disc had fused to its bearings. Sandra spent 2 weeks heating, lubricating, and hammering before the wheel gave its first groan. When it finally turned a single degree, the sound echoed across the pit like a waking heartbeat. With every restored system, the machine revealed more of its might. But Larry started showing up more often, always watching. He warned Jason that some things should stay buried. The ground-penetrating radar scans confirmed it. A void nearly the size of a football field was still migrating 8 meters below the tracks. If the bagger moved even slightly, the entire machine could drop into the earth, triggering a secondary collapse that would swallow everything in a quarter-mile radius. The tension ratcheted up. Jason stood at the controls of the world's largest land vehicle, a machine that could dig 240,000 tons of coal a day if it didn't kill him first. And the man who knew the truth was standing at the edge of the pit, arms crossed, waiting to see which would happen first. Jason climbed back into the control cabin that evening. He pulled out the logbook again, flipping to the pages before the frantic final entry. There were months of routine reports, then a sudden gap. Dates missing, pages torn out. But between 2 stuck pages, he found a faded post-it note. Cavity expansion rate, 0.8 meters per year. In 2025, it will be directly under the pivot bearing. The note was dated 1993. Now, 32 years later, the void had shifted precisely to the one place that could kill everyone, beneath the 20-meter slewing ring that held the entire superstructure. If the bucket wheel spun at full torque, the ground would give way. The next morning, Jason cornered Larry with the note. Larry's shoulders sagged. He admitted that the mine's owners had commissioned a risk assessment after the logs were buried. The void was not static. It was a slow-motion sinkhole feeding on an underground aquifer. The more they dug or moved, the faster it would migrate. They could fill it, but the volume was enormous, over 400,000 cubic meters of grout, a cost exceeding $40 million. Money nobody had. The machine was a ticking clock, but Sandra had a different idea. She'd spent weeks studying the hydraulic systems and the slewing ring's load distribution. She proposed that instead of filling the void, they could use the bagger's own weight to compress the surrounding rock. By spinning the bucket wheel at a pinpoint slow speed, just enough to disturb the overburden without excavating, they could trigger a controlled subsidence that would redirect stress away from the bearing. The void would collapse inward harmlessly into a stable arch. It was theoretical. It had never been done with a machine this massive. One miscalculation and the entire excavator would drop into a crater. Larry called them insane. Jason saw the calculation in Sandra's eyes, 40 million versus nothing. They had no choice. That night, under floodlights powered by their portable substation, they began the sequence. Sandra stood at the auxiliary control panel with her hand on the torque limiter. Jason manned the master ignition. Larry stood at the perimeter, arms crossed, watching. The world's largest land vehicle was about to either wake up or bury them alive. The moment came without ceremony. Sandra called out the sequence over the radio. Jason engaged the primary drive motor. A deep hum rolled through the steel skeleton. The bucket wheel twitched, then began to turn, 1 degree per second, then 2. The ground groaned beneath them. Instruments showed pressure spiking on the slewing ring. Sandra counted down. When the wheel hit its 3rd revolution, a sound like thunder cracked the air, and then nothing. The void had collapsed inward exactly as she calculated. A geyser of dust exploded half a mile away. The earth settled with a sigh. Larry stared at the plume rising into the sky, arms still crossed, but a grin finally broke through. The Bagger 288 just safely swallowed its own grave. From that point, the restoration shifted into high gear. Sandra and her team spent the next 3 weeks calibrating every system: the 18 buckets, the miles of conveyor belts, the crawler tracks that could inch the beast forward at 10 meters per minute. Jason documented it all: the first full rotation of the wheel at operational speed, the first time the conveyor carried crushed rock across the boom. The machine that once cost $100 million, abandoned for 3 decades, was chewing ground again. And then the call came. A representative from the original mining conglomerate, RWE, had seen Jason's footage online. They informed him that the bagger was still listed as an asset on their books, never officially decommissioned. Larry's sale, they argued, was unauthorized. For a tense 48 hours, Jason thought his restoration might be reclaimed. But RWE didn't want the machine back. They wanted to see it. The company sent a delegation to the pit, and what they found stunned them: a 45-year-old excavator, buried to hide a secret, now spinning with the roar of a waking titan. They offered Jason a contract to operate it as a living museum piece, generating more attention for the new green mining initiatives than any advertisement could buy. And that surprising detail at the end of it all: Jason, the machinery hunter who bought a monument for pocket change, had turned $8,000 into a legacy. The giant was back, and he was its keeper. So here it stands, a 13,000-ton monument to stubbornness and engineering. The biggest land vehicle on Earth, bought for less than a used sedan, now spins its 60-foot wheel over ground it once nearly collapsed. Jason didn't just restore a machine. He pulled a 30-year secret out of the earth and gave it a second life as a living legend. The question that lingers, though, isn't about how he did it. It's about how many other giants are still buried out there, decommissioned, sealed up, and forgotten, hiding stories that could rewrite the history of industry. If one man with $8,000 and a team of believers can wake a titan, what else is waiting? If you want to see where Jason's next colossal restoration takes him, hit that like and subscribe. The machine is back, and we're only just getting started.